So hello, I'm Tina Madison White, she, her, hers. I'm with the Asheville View, and we're here today to learn a little bit about Asheville's queer arts community from some local artists. At the moment, Liz Williams and Jékksyn Orilyn Ícaro. Liz and Jékksyn, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you so much. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, Jékksyn.
Pretty good, can't complain.
So first, just a quick introduction of yourselves. How long have you been in Asheville? Where did you come here from? And just so your thimble bio.
Well, I've been in Asheville for about 10 years and I moved from Athens, Georgia. And I am currently the program manager of Southern Equality Studios through Campaign for Southern Equality. And before that, I was working in customer service. So this has been a really awesome and bittersweet year in a huge way.
Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Jékksyn and Liz Ícaro. My pronouns are they, them. I've been in Asheville for 25 plus years. I'm 30. I am the Arts and Cultural Director at Tranzmission. Yeah. I was a CNA before that, right before COVID hit. I was a CNA and took a break, and this is where we are now.
Let's start with the queer arts community, but I'd love to talk to you both about perhaps your activist work as well. I've heard people use the word or the term queer arts community in Asheville a lot, but who is this community exactly? How big is it? How diverse? Can you describe the community as a community? Is it a community?
I think that this community is very large and diverse, and I feel like I'm scratching the surface of the members of the queer artist community because there's just so many things that you don't know and so many people that you haven't met in this small town. But yeah, it's really interesting to just see how many interactions and collaborations I've had with people I didn't know existed. So yeah, it's really vast, and I try to make efforts to try to connect the queer artist community through queer artist meetups through the Southern Equality Studios. We have a queer artist meetup every Tuesday, and we would love to have more people. We have a nice solid base of people who come around, but we also have like a rotation of queer artists, and they come from Asheville as well as the other 12 southern states. So yeah, it's been really interesting to see the virtual community coming together as well as like the physical community that exists, but it's just scratching the surface. So I can't say definitively who all is in the community.
Sure.
Yeah, I would definitely piggyback off that and say Asheville is a small town with a big city heart. There are so many different subcultures of the queer community. There's so many that I don't even know of, and I don't even think I could name all the ones that I know. Like there's people like West Asheville culture is so different than downtown downtown Asheville culture is different from North Asheville culture is different in Weaverville and Candler, and the rural queers. There's so many different communities, and some of us have our feet in multiple. So to try to describe what the queer Asheville art scene is like is trying to tell somebody what chocolate tastes like without them ever knowing what chocolate tastes like, right?
And forgive me, I may be asking like, where could I breathe air? But if someone asked you, where could I go see queer art? If I want to go and enjoy it or learn about it, where would they go in Asheville?
That's a very good question.
Yeah, I don't have a go-to for that. I think one way is joining the queer artist meetups and seeing, like, connecting with different people, because right now with COVID, everything is so virtual, and people are starting to like open up, like the museum. That's awesome that it's starting to open up, and Center for Craft. But I mean, I don't think that we have a concentrated area for just queer artists. So I definitely try to think of utilizing my privilege in having like art series and trying to create collaborative work with queer artists. Like I had a series last month through the Revolve Gallery where I was the artist in residence, and I tapped in Jékksyn as well as other queer artists. And that was a space to see queer art because I was trying to showcase the art there. But that was only for 1 month. And also because of COVID, there was only like 3 people that could come into that space for that 1 month. It was really just like 2 weeks that actually people could see it since it was an ongoing residency. But yeah, I don't know where I can go now to see art, which is really sad.
Yeah, I feel like it because of COVID, everything is online, and I would strongly encourage Instagram as one of our biggest community meets of queer artists, because then you can just follow the dots, right? Like Instagram does that fancy thing where if you follow somebody, it'll show you other suggestions, and 9 times out of 10, if you follow me, you'll get Liz, and if you follow Liz, you'll get other queer artists, and like we're just in this giant L-word chart of queer artists in Asheville. So especially with COVID hitting, there's like you can throw a rock and look around and see art in Asheville, where we're known as the queer mecca of the South.
I'm not an artist, so I don't know when you're creating art, what's motivating you, and how does your identity, if at all, play a role in that? Do you create art for just yourself and for self-expression, or do you think of an audience or an effect you want to have? What's going on in your mind when you're creating your art?
For me, there's so many intersections of identity that I have that I need to express. I don't make art for anybody but myself most of the time. I do commissions, and every now and then I'll pick up some political art and make that, but most of it is for myself, including the political art, especially the political art. I'm Black, I'm non-binary, I'm multiracial, I have different ethnic origins and backgrounds, I have mental health issues, I have so many intersecting identities that I express through art. And that is my main reason for making art. I've done it since I was a child. I will probably do it well into old age, hopefully, fingers crossed. So
I definitely relate to just having self-expression with my work. It's just kind of my therapy to work through things that words can't express. And sometimes I'll try to share that with the audience, like through Instagram or an art series. But yeah, I feel as though most of my work is for myself, especially as I'm navigating like darker chapters of existence. And if people connect with it, that's a bonus.
Asheville strives, and that might be an honest way to put it, strives to be inclusive in its arts. But I think we've been learning a lot lately that it does not measure up to that. And I'm just curious how, if you think about equity and inclusion, feeling welcome, feeling you have access to audiences, what's it like to be an artist in Asheville these days, a queer artist?
I think right now, during this time, it's been interesting to see, like in the media and through so many things, that people are finally like waking up like, oh my gosh, all this time people outside of my identity exist and I haven't invited them to the table. So it's been interesting to see people want to invite you to different events, different opportunities, but at the same time, it's a thin line between opportunity and tokenizing somebody. And I feel as though we have to work harder to express like wanting to put a net out for everybody who is Black, who is queer, and a person of color. Because if you're just pointing to one person, there is that chance of just exhausting that person, and that's also a sense of violence towards that one type of artist, because there's so many others, and the more bridges, the better. So that's my take on these opportunities, but still, it could be better, without a doubt. There could be more opportunities available for more people.
Yeah, I agree. What I don't remember quite off the top of my head what the percentage of white people is in Asheville, but it's like astronomical, right? It's super high. We're a very white city, and finding queer Black folks is like finding a heart-shaped pebble on a beach. So when I do find my queer Black community, I want to hold them very close. And we're often very much in community together. There's not a whole lot of us. So it becomes like we get tired, like Liz was saying, we get tired, but also we need to be seen. And there's not just like 4 of us. I think there needs to be more work done by white folks to find BIPOC artists that are not known. And that they don't know. I think nets need to be cast wider, for longer, and you need to look in places that you haven't looked before.
White people often talk about, we need to support the arts more, but what does that mean to you? I mean, what support, whether it's from individuals, galleries, the city, festivals, do you have any thoughts on tangible things that, and let's roll away COVID for just a few minutes and reimagine next year. What would be the tangible things that people could do to create more access, equity, and awareness on their own part?
People want to talk about how exposure is like, we'll give you exposure, we'll give you this, like you come do this for us, you have such great exposure, we're a great event. Yes, that's all fine and dandy, but throw some coin in there too. We need some capital as well. We're putting thousands of hours, like when you see a piece of artwork, it's not just the amount of hours that went into that piece of artwork, it's the thousands and thousands of hours that came before that piece of artwork, the many, many mistakes that came before that, all of the learning experiences that we have. Our entire lives culminated into one painting that you're asking for. So capital and cash, give me coin, those things are important. We are surviving out here, and oftentimes in low-end jobs, because racism is real, and it's proven to be harder for people of color, for Black people, for Indigenous people to get jobs and maintain jobs. So I think keeping in mind, particularly for Black and brown folks, that the art that we provide needs to be paid for.
I completely agree. Yeah, just exposure is definitely not enough. And I want to continue to see these calls for artists like via Instagram and all the other methods of getting a message across, like in Facebook, in the news, in the newspaper, and say that you're going to pay people, because words speak, but money speaks louder, especially showing that you value somebody's life and all of the hard work that they've done, especially now that people are beginning to be aware that, oh, yeah, I guess I do have privilege, versus all of these others, all of the Black, Indigenous people of color who are working as hard as me, if not harder, to make a name for themselves, to make any type of dent in this art world for their space.
Yeah, I think another thing that I would like to mention is, I know there's a lot of grants that are out here, that I get forwarded a bunch of them. I get tagged in a bunch of them, but the language in grants is often complicated. It's very complex a lot of the times. It's higher learning language, right? I am not somebody who has a college degree. I have attended some college, but have yet to attain an associate's degree. And I also have like learning disabilities that get in the way of me reading a lot and comprehending what I read. So a lot of the times when grants have a bunch of fancy words in them, or like words that pertain to the business of being a capitalist artist, right? Or I can't understand it and I get frustrated and I'll give up. So the accessibility of these grants needs to be better, especially if you're trying to target, say, lower income folks who haven't had the opportunity to go to college, whose parents haven't had the opportunity to college, who come from lower class, less education. We need to make these things accessible and not just pander to higher learned folks.
Let's switch for a minute and tell me about, you two are working with two of my favorite organizations in the city in Campaign for Southern Equality and Transmission. Tell me a little bit, if you will, about that work and how it connects to your artistic work.
So with Campaign for Southern Equality, about 2 years ago, team members from that org, they were conversing and realized we need to have art represented in the work that we're doing because it speaks on so many different movements that have happened in the past and will continue to happen. And so they reached out to me to start up an artist residency, and I was one of their artists in residence, as well as Al Murray, and we worked together to make an art series. And the art series is based on collaborating with different queer artists and seeing how their present lives were informed by their past lives. And we called the series Uprooted. And Al made these awesome kinetic sculptures and I made portraits. And if it wasn't for Campaign for Southern Equality, I wouldn't have really reached out to these queer artists. I wouldn't have met Jékksyn. So I'm so excited that that occurred. And because of that extroverted series, I've been working more and more to communicate and to collaborate and build community with artists throughout the South. And that has definitely informed my art because people will sometimes have these critiques during the queer artist meetups or just like in passing. And that has helped me to explore different aspects of my imagination that I didn't think existed. So CSE has definitely helped to shape my art in a really positive way that has more messaging behind it, because aside from doing portraits and collaborations with like other artists and their art mediums, it's also helped to inform this work that Al and I have been working on, where we do projections on different parts of the downtown area. There's a series of projections we've done on the Asheville Art Museum, as well as the courthouse and the Vance Monument, which basically speaks on tearing that down, also tearing down white supremacy and having a list of demands of all the things that we need in order to create an equitable society. And with CSE, I've been able to have that large canvas for people to see outside of just like Facebook or social or Instagram or just me on my computer screen. So yeah, that's been pretty great having that that opportunity with CSE. And also I think it's helped to inspire other people to create some work that is more protest driven. So that might actually contradict a little bit of that previous answer about just self-expression, because yeah, I would say my personal work is more like that, just self-expression, but definitely I try to create work that speaks to the public as well and has a message behind it.
It's fantastic.
Liz is a bit more accomplished than I am in their organizations. I work with Tranzmission. I am the art and cultural director. I have been making digital graphics for our COVID relief fund, basically any graphic that's gone out from Tranzmission. Most of them I have made personally. That way we have individually designed graphics. I want to expand more of what this does because it is the arts and cultural director. I just haven't quite figured out how to do that exactly yet. COVID kind of threw a wrench in my entire plan. And now I have to rethink everything. But I really want to work around figuring out how to bring more trans artists together and to get more trans artists in a spotlight, similar to what Black Casper has done for Black trans musicians with transgenders. I don't know if y'all know them. I met Black Casper at BTAC, and they are an amazing a French Canadian artist, music artist who's producing a bunch of Black trans musicians and pumping them out like crazy. They've been recognized by like BET and MTV. They're up and coming. I'm very excited about the work that they're doing. So I want to do something similar along those lines, but for visual artists, for visual trans artists, particularly BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color. Because I think it's important for us to be seen. The art community is so saturated with white voices, and now is not the time. We need to see more Black people out here. We need to see more Indigenous people out here. I want to see more people of Mexican and Puerto Rican and Cuban and Dominican descent out here, giving us their stories, giving us their work. Because like in academia, my art history class was just learning a bunch of white old men, and I don't care about it. It's the most boring thing in the world. Teach me about the Indigenous artists, teach me about Black artists, teach me about the revolutionaries who painted their way through the civil rights movement, because let's not forget that art is a pillar and a very important part of civil rights movements.
In Asheville, our society, it still remains pretty segregated, whether you're talking about where people live or the events they go to. Again, how would you say, in your experience, that's reflected in the arts community and in the queer arts community in particular? Is it far more diverse and welcoming, or does it reflect the underlying population here? What's it like?
I would say it mostly reflects the underlying population. There's so many white people, there's so many white artists. The gentrification that's happened here in Asheville has pushed poor brown people, poor Black people out. So we don't see us very often. I would love to bring Black people back to Asheville and see more Black neighborhoods, see more Black businesses, see more Black art, period, just out and around Asheville. Because right now we talk about how Asheville is so liberal, but and what's the word I'm looking for? Inclusive, I guess, but for who? It's for white people mostly. Black people are pushed to the outsides and the outskirts, and when we say something about it, then we're problematic and we're divisive.
Yeah, I definitely feel that I feel segregated more from people who look like me, because people are working so hard just to survive in this city, because the rent is too high, everything is too high, because it's serving tourists. And because people are so busy trying to survive, especially during a pandemic, it just feels as though community, I don't know, I feel as though like we're realizing in Asheville, like the Black community, like we're realizing that we do need to build more bridges, because if we don't, then white liberals will just kind of steamroll over us. And it's pretty unfortunate, but I'm really glad that through all of the tragedies that have happened this year, that I feel as though that has brought a stronger bond with the Black community. Like I've met more people this year than I think, strangely enough, than I've met for the last 5 years. And a vigil was one of the catalysts for meeting people in the community, Black people in the community. So yeah, it definitely feels more segregated, but hopefully as this pandemic starts to end, we'll have more opportunities and more connections.
Where are you two headed for next year? Where do you hope to be headed? What do you want to be focused on?
I want to be further away from my computer screen and more in person with people because it really means so much just to feel a non-virtual energy between people when we're trying to inspire each other. And I want to work on more in-person collaborations with people outside of doing the Black Lives Matter mural. Black Lives Matter mural. I wasn't a part of that, but I definitely want to have collaborative work that speaks to the Black queer community, and I want it to be with people in person. So I'm hoping that that will happen. And yeah, I hope that more people realize that if they have privilege, that they need to work harder in creating opportunities for people and not just tokenizing people, but actually making a concerted effort to table and offer more seats at that table. And I would love to see more Black people in galleries and museums through equitable and accessible means, which is definitely available because I have seen people like actually speak as though they're talking to a human person who's not just a scholar. And I need to see more of that because we don't need this type of gatekeeping, especially now that we're realizing that the pandemic has been going on for centuries, not just this year. So that's where I'm at right now.
Amen.
Yes. Huh. Hold on, let me take that in for a second. Because yes, the pandemic is like, who was it that I was talking to? I was talking about how this isn't the first pandemic that I've lived through, that racial oppression is also a pandemic. Yes. And come on, equitable accessibility, just yes. I want to celebrate more Black joy. I'm so tired of mourning Black death. I want peace. I want to build with community. I'm tired. I'm deeply in the marrow of my bones, so very tired of this movement. It's necessary and I will keep going with it until the bitter ends. Like, I know it probably will not end in my lifetime, which is deeply saddening, but I'm very tired of it. like we all are. I'm tired. I am getting top surgery in the next month. So my next year, my big goals is to focus on obtaining land. That way I can have a place for people to come where I can go, where we all can congregate that is safe. I think a connection to the land is so very important, and there's just not an opportunity, particularly within the mountains of the South, that is very accessible for people of color to just get back to it. It's terrifying out here for a lot of us, particularly being Black and queer, to live in the South. That's some scary stuff. So my next focus and goal is to obtain some land, to live peacefully in my queer little Black gay self, and make art. I have a couple of series that I'm working on, and that's all I want to do. Is I don't. If COVID taught me one thing, it's that I want to be a capitalist. I am so done with the capitalist agenda. I have no aspirations of making more money than I need. I just want to live. That's it. That's all I want.
You two this has been a real treat talking to you two, and thank you so much for opening up and sharing your experiences and your work. And I hope you get everything you just listed for 2021.
Thank you very much.
It's been a great opportunity, Tina. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks.